Alright, skill-based matchmaking. I know this topic has been done to death, but let's be honest. The more voices we have in the dialogue, the more likely things are to be improved for everyone. Mellow greetings, fellow gamers, and anyone who's confused as fuck on why this is such a controversial topic. I'm the Splinter, and today, I'm gonna put myself in the camp saying skill-based matchmaking is good. But before we get started, I'm a newish channel and trying to grow. Please hit that subscribe button and give my brain a social media fueled dopamine hit. Now, I won't be talking about the algorithm for sbmm since it does seem that everybody does implement it a little bit different. However, with that said, the general gist of skill-based matchmaking is that as you play and improve, the back-end matchmaking systems look at your overall performance and attempt to match you with other players of a similar skill, which in theory provides you with a more challenging experience. If we think back to old school games, Halo 2, Reach, a lot of the early Call of Duty games, and the most recently released Modern Warfare 2, and Destiny 1, there were some variations of sbmm for those. Now, for like OG, Halo, and a lot of other games, it was called True Skill, but these days the systems are really just referred to as skill-based matchmaking. But as I mentioned earlier, there's two main camps in this discussion. Camp 1, skill-based matchmaking absolutely sucks and it's ruining video games. Camp 2, skill-based matchmaking isn't ruining games, it's the streamers ruining it. And to be fair, both perspectives aren't necessarily wrong, although I do disagree with most arguments the anti-skill-based matchmaking folks like to hinge their conversations on. Camp 1 argues that skill-based matchmaking ruins games. Several large creators have come out in agreement. The most visible example to me is Tim the Tatman, a rather large and influential creator who's mostly just as entertaining as he is large from a platform perspective. So no disrespect to him or hate. But here's a clip of him explaining his stance on skill-based matchmaking.
Can I be completely honest with you guys? If sbmm wasn't a thing, I would stream multiplayer. sbmm, I've said this before and I'll say it again, man. sbmm is I dare say killing video games as a whole. I don't want to get on a huge sbmm tangent here. We don't have to do this, okay? But it literally, I am playing against Giga Sweats with no rating, and then John comes in with, his binky in his mouth, and John's like, wow, you're ass. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm playing against guys that have like a 1.5 or a 2 or a 3 KD, and John's playing against 0.02. At the bare minimum, if you're going to put I don't know how, I don't understand. Let me give you, here, ready? Watch this. I'm going to draw you guys a graph. Ready for this? Here's my graph. Okay, ready? Quick play ranked. Okay. sbmm no sbmm. How hard is this? You guys like my chart here? This is it. I don't understand. It's a graph. This is a graph. I don't understand how video game companies don't understand this.
So if you're a little confused by the use of 4 boxes, it appears that his point that quick play and casual shouldn't have skill-based matchmaking, and that ranked should. And I agree, sort of. Quick play matches should just be for quick, casual games to just mess around. And like I said, I agree with that to an extent, but here's a slight redo of what Tim was talking about. Top left, you have quick play with no skill-based matchmaking, and then top right, you have ranked with skill-based matchmaking. However, what he and many large streamers or content creators really mean is that quick play should have no skill-based matchmaking, so streamers of an above-average skill level can ape, and therefore put on a good show against a random assortment of people, most of whom they're likely much better than, since they do make a living playing these games. Thus, if they were to have to play in ranked, then they can't go on those insane kill sprees and do me more of these shit to entertain their audience. Now, Camp 2, my camp, is in support of skill-based matchmaking, and the reason I support it has some nuance. I grew up with skill-based matchmaking, and the whole thought process behind it was to make the matches more fair. Nobody has fun when they have only a little bit of time to devote to improving in a game they like, and thus can't no-life it like they used to in their early teens or 20s. So skill-based matchmaking is one way to balance that out a bit. Nobody likes getting stomped, and that's the number one reason people will stop playing a game. Let's look at Destiny 2's PvP state. While Bungie has done a ton to improve things, I remember back to Destiny 1. Back then, D1 would regularly be at the top of the charts on Twitch for Crucible, Trials of Osiris, or Iron Banner. These days, sometimes you'll see it get up into the top levels, but not as much as what it used to. And from my own understanding and perception, players have really walked away from it in droves over the years, mostly because there's a reduced interest in PvP. Now, I used to main D1 and D2 as my go-to PvP games after Halo jumped the shark, but as Bungie began to cater more and more to the content creators, it became less fun for the more casual or average players. And so I would argue that skill-based matchmaking doesn't kill video games or their fun. I would argue that as live streaming grew and top tier players began collectively bitching about having to face sweats all the time, their voices started to drown out the average players and they inevitably got their way. Now that's part of why we hear a lot of large content creators speaking out against skill-based matchmaking. And they do try to argue that the fun gets taken out of the game because they have to face so many sweats. But here's what they're acknowledging, and it's the reason they have to face sweats. And the reason they have to face sweats is because they themselves are fucking sweats. It's the same argument you hear from billionaires that don't pay taxes. If you make me pay taxes, I won't be able to pay my workers more, which means they get a lower standard of living. When what they're really saying is, if you make me pay taxes, I won't have as much fun oppressing those less fortunate than me. It's the same fucking argument. There's a vocal minority that speaks so loudly their hopelessly devoted simps and stans will parrot every fucking word they say. Can you name a politician that's done that recently? Same goddamn behavior. Boys and girls, skill-based matchmaking isn't as bad as the streamers want you to believe. Does it need to be in casual and ranked matches? Abso-fucking-lutely. However, it shouldn't be the main defining factor for matching in casual style playlists. Casual should prioritize connections and have a much looser skill grouping. And here's what I'm talking about. So looking at my new chart, on the left side we have casual, and the way I would define it is connection based with a smaller weighting on skill brackets. You break players up into 4 overall brackets: 0 to 25, 26 to 50, 51 to 75, 76 to 100, from worst to best. That way, maybe somebody in the 76 to 100 never has to face somebody from 0 to 25. But let's go over to rank. You got your skill-based brackets only, and you do a much narrower definition of the skill levels. 0 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, and so on and so forth. So in theory, what you have is your top tier players will never ever run into a scenario in which they're fighting the lower tiered players. Now, in rank, nobody argues that that's not a big deal. But it is a big deal when you have such a loose grouping of players. You have your top 10% going into the casual playlist and shitting on the bottom 10%. And so, while a lot of that bottom 10%, they will improve and move themselves up, what happens is even more of them are going to get frustrated and leave. Because let's be honest, playing competitively at anything does require a little bit of natural talent. I am going to be naturally better than maybe you. Maybe you're going to be naturally better than me at something else, and so on and so forth. And so when you have a very large dedicated group of people that are very good at the game, who are tired of facing people at their skill level, what do? Well, back in the Halo 3 days, we used to just create new Xbox Live gamer tags and go stomp on the noobs. Nowadays, you don't have that easy of a time. So is my implementation idea perfect? Of course not. And I don't think anything skill-based will be perfect until we can get an AI to analyze billions of hours of gameplay and create highly specific ranking criteria. But is skill-based matchmaking bad? No, it's not. It's not the end of the world like the partnered PvP sweats would have you believe, but hey, what do I know? I'm just a small content creator trying to get my voice heard. And while I understand the value from a content creation standpoint of not having to sweat every match, I also think some creators rely more on their gameplay to entertain than they should. While having entertaining content is important, it's also important to paint a realistic picture of yourself. Now think about that one Twitch streamer, and we all knew who I'm talking about. It's the one that caught a bunch of shit for saying they're the best Warzone player in their category, and then it turns out there's some mitigating circumstances likely at play to make them look better than what they really are. So I implore you, don't listen to the big streamers or content creators. Hell, don't even listen to me. Form your own opinion, and you'll find, like in most things, the correct answer to a question is rarely on the extreme ends of a spectrum. The right answer is usually somewhere in the middle. But with that said, what do you think? Are you for or against skill-based matchmaking? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'm the Splinter. The end.